Welcome to the 4 Habits podcast, where we help you build relationships that thrive at home, at work, and in life. We're Dr. Andrea and John Taylor-Cummings, and every week we bring you actionable insights to create meaningful connections and lasting success. So let's dive in.
Today we're going to be talking about an all-important, very relevant, very sensitive but necessary conversation, and it's how do we navigate life after divorce, get over the animosity and the conflict, and pull together for the sake of the children in a healthier way. And with us in conversation is Brenda Bridges, who walked that journey herself. Welcome, Brenda. So good to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. I'm really pleased and excited to be here.
We're really looking forward to talking through the principles that you share. But before we do, as our audience knows, we need to give you your proper introduction. Over to John.
Always love doing this bit. All right, here we go. So Brenda Bridges is a certified divorce financial analyst, mediator, and relationship coach who turns post-divorce minefields into bridges of understanding. After walking her own painful road of co-parenting conflict, she founded Bridging Divorce Solutions to help separated parents replace courtroom battles with collaboration that protects their children's well-being. Blending financial expertise with heart-centered coaching, Brenda equips families to communicate honestly, set healthy boundaries, and make values-based decisions together. Her story is one of transforming personal struggle into a purposeful mission, showing parents that even after divorce, strong relationships are still possible and vital. Now, Brenda, you often say divorce doesn't have to be a war.
Yes.
A war with winners and losers. So what turned that phrase from theory into, I guess, what's now become a life mission for you?
I think that at least here societally, we've come to accept and expect that when a couple goes through divorce, they are going to face off, they are going to hate each other, they are going to do as much damage as possible, they are going to win as much as possible. And I don't think that's a productive way to dissolve a marriage. These are people who once loved each other, cared very deeply, perhaps had children together. If they do, they will forever be connected. So the mission and passion became, how can we reframe this process? And it's not, in my mind, a judgment of is divorce good or bad, right or wrong. This is if they've already decided it's going to happen, they will divorce, then why can't we take that process and frame it differently so that they're given the support and information they need to make good decisions for their family? And then in that, keep them out of the courtroom, which is essentially a criminal system, and put them into, a more comfortable, less pressure-filled, less high-stakes setting where they can make all of these decisions. And instead of framing it as who wins and loses, because no one wins divorce, to reframe it as how do we get through this as intact as possibly for both parties? And how do we do the least damage to the children while setting people up to parent them as they're still growing and moving forward in their lives?
You used, wow, this is so powerful because the words you used and the different stages are just heavy with emotion all the way through, anger and grief and regret and vindictiveness, maybe wanting to get back if they've been really hurt, and moving them to this very grown-up position of, okay, this is happening, how do we do it in the kindest possible way and look after the kids in the process? How do you do that? What are the principles that you use to help people do that journey, change mindsets and become more heart-centered? I mean, even asking the question is a big question in itself.
I think a lot of it, it's been a journey for me. I've been doing this for a decade now, and every single year, every single set of clients, every single case, I learn. So it's certainly been an evolution. I think a lot of it is transforming from the telling and educating and teaching and showing to the asking and being curious and allowing people space to figure out what they really need, not what they're told they should, what they really want, what their values are. So you asked like how I approach it, with curiosity, with care, with non-judgment, with allowing people the space to be hurt. There's a book, I don't know if you all have heard of it, but it has been quite popular here, or the phrase has. And it's basically about divorce and says, think logically, not emotionally. And it makes me cringe because we're emotional people. And we make decisions and we behave emotionally, not logically, even if we'd like to be totally logically. My background is as a financial advisor. We would like to think we're all making our financial decisions logically. You know, the numbers say we don't. We're all emotionally driven. So rather than saying, oh, let's put that away and not address it, you know, that doesn't have a place here, we're going to put it in its box. Divorce is one of the most emotional things people can go through.
Yeah.
So why don't we, instead of saying, okay, settle down now and treat this as though you're dissolving a business, let's say we understand this is really perhaps traumatic. It's certainly emotional. It's very high stakes, especially if it's a long-term marriage. You're making some of the biggest financial and family decisions you will ever make. Well, let's talk about those emotions. Let's acknowledge them. And then let's shift the conversation from being about the negative emotions to what is your vision for your future? What are your values that are important to you? What are your values that you want to pass on to your kids? And what does that look like? You know, if people are being encouraged, and our litigation system here certainly does, if they're being encouraged to, you know, fight and win at all costs, to take as much as you can from the family, kids see that. What are we teaching them if we are condoning that this process of reshaping your family should be a battle? And what if instead they saw people doing it thoughtfully, with care, with concern for the other party, and the desire being that we're both going to be as okay as we can be, knowing that we're making hard decisions and we're taking what was one household and the income that supported it, and we're splitting it into two. So there are going to be some sacrifices, most likely.
To the sorry,
no.
Yes, to the extent that you're comfortable, could you share some of your experience that brought you to this point
Sure.
of being so level-headed about how to bring the emotion into the room and deal with kindness and so on? What got you to that point?
Because I had a really bad divorce and I handled it very poorly. I would love to say like, oh, I marched through this just like everyone should, and it was a beautiful thing, and it was unicorns and roses, and it wasn't. It was horrible. So it's been like anyway, time doesn't matter. My husband said he wanted a divorce, and I was not prepared for that. And it's not as though we had a good relationship and then suddenly it's like, what's going on here? Everything is perfect. It was more of being in a place where it was like, this is our relationship, and I accept that this is our relationship. And there are really important parts of my life that I really don't want to upend. My children's lives, you know, volunteering, sports, all the other things than the relationship. That being said, he wanted a divorce, and we started down that path. And the process was, even though it was a collaboratively based process, so it was out of court, it was still couched in winning. There wasn't a lot of talk about goals and needs. It was much more about, you know, name calling and who deserves what. And it sounds a little weird to say, I would love to see, and I'm pointing over here because that's where my table is, that we all sit down and talk about these things when I'm working with people. I see so many people going through divorce who do not wish ill on their partner. They just want to move on. They want them to be okay. They want to be okay. They want to move forward without destruction, or at least minimizing it. My experience of divorce was not that. It was a really long process. It was really expensive. So, we were about $20,000 into the process. And I remember going to my going to be ex-husband and being like, we really need to figure this out. We're spending so much money on this, and it doesn't seem like we're arguing over things that maybe we need to argue over. And it went on for another $100,000. So my divorce was $120,000, which is outlandish. And in my mind, like you started the question with, how did I land here? I think that's an outlandish amount of money to spend on a divorce. And through that process, we got to the point where, and still don't speak to each other. So we don't have a relationship. It wasn't framed in, you're going to have these kids together forever. What do you want that to look like when they graduate, when they get married, when they have milestones as their parents? What do you want this to look like? Instead, it was treated as though the divorce is the end. And the divorce isn't the end. The divorce is the beginning of how things are reshaped. Being treated as the divorce was the end, I wasn't really prepared for what came next. And then what became evident really quickly was that there was a very big mistake in the settlement that needed to be corrected. And that went on for multiple years and ended up back in court. So we then went to court, and that was another $37,000 that was mine paid. And as I traveled through this, I just kept looking at it and going, there's got to be a better way.
Yeah.
Like, why is this acceptable? Why is it condoned that this kind of outlandish spending, that this kind of acrimonious behavior is seen as like, oh, well, they're getting divorced. Of course it's like that. That's normal. Why do we normalize this? So that was part of it, and part of my journey was also, I had so identified with my marriage and my life built around that, my neighbors, my relationships, my kids, like that was my identity. My identity wasn't me. It was defined as all of the things I am to other people. When you get divorced, that's gone. Not only your marriage, but identity as a full-time mom. Now you're a half-time mom, or whatever your percentage of parenting time is. Identity as a couple in your neighborhood with other people in those relationships. We're not taught how you walk through that. And the other people who have been maybe our close friends or people we spend time with, they don't know how to treat you. So suddenly, it's not that you're a pariah because you're getting divorced or got divorced. I think it's because people don't know what to say, and people don't know how to interact with you, because now you're this new single thing that doesn't fit into the picture that you used to fit into. So part of my journey was looking at my divorce and going, wow, that was bad. And part of my journey was looking at my behavior and going, wow, that was bad. And how do I then put myself back together and help other people? And that became Bridging Divorce Solutions.
Wow. I mean, you clearly went on a very expensive journey. And I think most people going into divorce don't see that, or they know there's some numbers associated with it. They don't necessarily think how underestimate how big these numbers could be. And I think you made an interesting observation earlier, which was that some people go into divorce just saying, I don't wish the other party any ill at all. Just want to get through this and get out of here. I guess in our experience, we've seen some of that. But if one party has that, then I think it's rare for both parties to be totally cool with it and saying, "Oh, that's fine. Let's just do this amicably." Usually, there's one party who is very angry, very hurt, very, yeah, I don't like this.
Yep.
So there's a lot of anger and hurt and emotions in the mix. How do you get people to that grown up conversation of saying, okay, yeah, I know you're hurt. I know you're not in a good place right now, but actually let's look at bigger picture things here. Let's look at the goals down the road. Let's look at the kids, etc. That's probably not the space they're in. How do you help them bridge that? Maybe using bridging, what is it? Bridging divorce solutions, maybe using that term. How do you get them to bridge that gap?
It's less getting them to, and it's more making them or allowing them to have the space so they can do it themselves.
Okay.
So I'll give a story example. So I had a client a while back, and her husband, she was a stay-at-home mom with two very young kids, and she was older. Her husband, primary breadwinner, he had an affair. She was very mad.
Mm-hmm.
He spent a lot of the marital funds on this affair. She was very mad.
Mm-hmm.
He was leaving her. She had no career. She was very mad. Like, she was mad. Mm-hmm. And when I first met with her, she's like, I want to destroy him. I want to destroy him. I want him to have nothing. I want him to get, well, side note, the laws decide what you have, not the personal desires to destroy people. Yeah. So you got to always bear that in mind. But she was just like, she wanted him to lose his job, lose his house, lose his girlfriend, lose the children, lose everything.
Yep.
I want
no
him
custody,
to have
no
nothing.
Anything. No, yeah.
And then you kind of walk down that path like, okay, you want that. Then what will happen? What will happen if he doesn't have a job? Well, I'm going to feel better because he'll understand how I feel without a job. Okay. You keep walking down the path. And after we kept going down it, her realization was, wow, if he doesn't have a job, he doesn't have income. If he doesn't have income, he can't help pay to support the children. I don't have a job. I'll need to get a job. Then I won't get to spend time with my children. Like, she realized the picture she was painting, if she chose, I want him to suffer and pay and not have anything, would reflect back on her and mean that she would also suffer, pay. And I don't know about not have anything, but she certainly wouldn't be in a position of leading the lifestyle that she wanted to live or close to it. So she just evolved into, let her have her rant. Don't judge her. Don't tell her that's a horrible thing. It was more of a, and then what would happen? Mm-hmm. And I find usually when people are given the space to explore that, sorry, this was supposed to be on Do Not Disturb. Stop. So I find when people are given the space to explore or feel and work through it, very often they come to a conclusion for themselves. Mm-hmm. That's less damaging. That's more practical. That is part of the adult conversation. And it's different for all different people. Sometimes they do need the practicality of what would happen where you live. Yeah. So if someone's going to come in and they have a few children and they're the primary, and I can only speak to, the laws here, and it could be different. I know you have listeners throughout the world, so it's certainly driven by what the rules are where you live. But if someone comes into my office and says, I'm not paying child support, the law in our land is that if you have children, there's a formula in all of our states for child support based on incomes and how much time you spend with them. And that formula will dictate what you pay. So reality check is that's not a decision you get to make. Mm-hmm. So grown-up conversation is that's part of being a grown-up and a parent, is that child support is part of the picture. So it can go that way too.
And at what stage do you see people, and is it an individual who would come to you?
That was my question.
A couple?
You're working with, okay.
Yeah, good question. I work with both, and the capacity differs depending. So if I'm working with a couple, I'm a neutral party. My job there is to provide information, because often in divorce, people don't know what they don't know. They don't know where to start. They don't know what they have to decide. They don't know what's normal. They don't know that they would have to pay child support if they're the higher earner and have children. They don't know. So part of my job as a neutral is to say, here are all the things you need to decide. The decisions are yours. I'm not telling you what to do, but I'm shining the light on the things you need to talk about. The other part of that, because my background is financial as a CDFA, is to just help them organize their finances and figure out based on that what their agreement is going to be. It comes down to it's what they have, what they owe, what they earn, and what they spend. So they're looking at those 4 categories and deciding, is there going to be support? If so, what does it look like and for how long? And what are the rules where you live? How are they going to divide the assets? What is marital? What is not marital? It's sorting through all of that stuff with them as a neutral. Then they make their decisions. I write it up. We turn it over to an attorney. So that's one process. That's the majority of what I do. And the majority of people who come to me, they've already decided they're going to divorce and they want to stay out of court. They don't want to damage their children. There's a lot of hurt, perhaps, and anger, but they know enough to know they don't want to be spending $120,000 on court fees. They'd rather send their kid to college. And they don't want to spend 2 years of their lives watching this unravel. They want to control the calendar. So that's one capacity, neutral party. That's always out of court. The other capacity, and I do less and less of this, is as an advocate. And that's when people are in the court system. It's essentially the same role, but instead of being a neutral, I'm on their side. So I'm helping them figure out, like, what is their budget? Often one person in the marriage takes care of all that stuff, and the other person doesn't have a complete grasp of the finances. So we want to get them leveled up so they feel confident making their decisions as they move through this and understand their finances. We might be looking at things like cash flow in the future. What is it going to take for you to live? If in your settlement you get half of the assets, but that's the house and a retirement account, and there's nothing else and you don't have a job, you can't, your house, you can't access your retirement account without penalties. Is that a good settlement for you? Or might we want to look at your practical situation and that you need a lot more cash flow? And that retirement account doesn't make sense for you. So we're sorting through those things, looking at their life and what might be best for them, given their fact pattern, and helping them kind of, again, you're walking down the path of what is important to you. You know, do you want to stay home? Do you have that option? Do you want to go back to work? Do you need additional training? So they're in a position where they've thought through things before they're on the spot making decisions, or that they're asking for things that are realistic. If someone's been married for 2 years and they're asking for lifetime alimony, like you would see on an old soap opera or something, that is not realistic. So maybe we want to figure out the right questions to ask and what's practical. So that also saves people a lot of time.
Yeah.
Because they know what's reasonable to expect or not expect, ask for or not ask for.
You know, the approach, especially going to mediation and talking things through, thinking about in practical terms what would really happen if you got the revenge you sought, you know, how would that boomerang to you? That's a wonderful conversation to have. I don't know what it's like in the States, but I know here things were set up legally. They've only just changed it to the no fault divorce. Things were set up before where even if you had goodwill originally in the relationship, to go through the divorce process, you had to find mud to throw in a way that it would stick, so that inevitably people get riled and
Still need to go through it quickly.
Yeah, and then the whole thing becomes acrimonious. So it's like the legal system, once you go that route, is set up to break people and break relationships. How do you kind of make yourself known and intervene when people are just starting to think about divorce?
Most people will find me from podcasts.
Okay,
Okay.
go for it.
So usually when people start down this process, this is my experience and some research bears it out. One party is often about 2 years ahead of the other
Mm-hmm.
in their process. So they will start doing research. Sometimes, and I do not advocate this, they will go to Facebook groups and join a, women in divorce over 40 Facebook group and get their information from there. Sometimes they will go to people like podcasters who have vetted their experts to make sure that they are giving good advice and are trained to give that advice. So that person who's thinking about divorce is usually doing research often online, sometimes really good information, sometimes not so good information. But as they go down that path, they already start to form ideas about what they need to do, the style of divorce that they want to pursue. And like I said, sometimes it's bad information. If they start with bad information, they're likely to follow that path without a lot of thought. So, my counsel to anyone considering divorce is I call it 3 Ps. The first thing to do is figure out your purpose, figure out your goals, figure out what you want life to look like down the road, whether it's in the moment you want revenge and you want your ex to suffer because they've hurt you, or whether it's you just want to make sure you have a good standard of living and can save for retirement, or whether it's you just really want to order what you like on pizza and you haven't been able to do that for 25 years. What is it? Dig into that. Do you want to go to your child's wedding together and sit in the same pew? Do you never want to speak to them again? It's up to you to figure that out as you walk this path, but really start there, figuring out what's important to you and spend time with it and think about your kids. What do you want them to experience as they go through this process? After you figure that out, then you figure out your process. Do you want to mediate? Do you want collaborative divorce, which exists throughout most of the globe, I believe now? Or do you want a litigated process? You can also do it yourself in some places, depends on where you live and what the rules are. So you have 4 options for how you go through divorce. Do it yourself if you can, and if it makes sense. Mediation, there are different flavors of that. Collaborative process or litigation through the court system. So you figure that part out. Ideally, you're talking to your partner, going to be former partner, as you're working through this. And then the next phase is to find the professionals in the system that can help you do that. And if you're thoughtful about that as you walk through the beginning of it, then you're teeing yourself up or you're setting yourself up to make good, thoughtful, mindful decisions as you continue.
And just to be clear, Brenda, the mediation collaborative process, where do you fall? Or does it matter? Does it depend on whether it's a single person or a couple?
Those are always a couple. I participate as a neutral, and they're out of court solution to divorce.
So is that the mediated process or the collaborative process?
It's both. And that's a really good question because it can get confusing. I look at it as the main difference is in mediation, you have one professional who is a neutral person. You don't have anyone in the room saying, do this, don't do this. It's a good idea. That's a bad idea. You don't have an advocate in that room. You have a mediator who's neutral. There are all sorts of if-thens. People still might consult attorneys, yada, yada. But the basic of mediation is the person leading the process who's the professional is neutral to the parties. Right. In collaborative, you have a neutral who is kind of managing process and doing the finances. So usually there's only one financial person in that process, but you also have attorneys. So that's the big difference between mediation and collaborative. In collaborative, you have attorneys but they're specially trained attorneys to be goal-oriented rather than winning-oriented.
Right.
Okay, that's really helpful and healthier, it sounds.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's great that you've explained the different channels as well. It's really helpful. The question I had, a couple of number of questions, multiple questions coming through as you speak. One, I liked the point you made about there being, I think you said there were three. I'm liking the idea of 3 P's to a smooth divorce or something like that. I think if I got them right, there was purpose, process, and professionals. Is that correct? You also mentioned pizza in there, but I don't think that was one of the P's.
No, but that's a good piece.
Yeah, but in the process, if you had people out there who are somebody who's set their mind, you know what, I want out. I don't want to go through this anymore. I'm out of here. I want the other party may or may not be with me on this, but I want out. What would your recommendation be to them to say this is the best way to go about it? Is it what would that be? Is it the mediation route? Is it come to somebody like yourself? Would it be come alone initially, or get your other half to come and we have a conversation together? What would your recommendation be for best possible outcomes at lowest cost? Because I mean, ultimately, that's what everybody wants out of this. But
save the money for the kids, goodness.
But also, I mean, lowest cost is do it yourself, but it's also the most likely to land you back in court because of error mistakes or to not be a sound agreement.
Yeah.
So I tend to, unless you have no assets, have no children, haven't been married a long time, if that's the case, do it yourself. Otherwise, I would look for guidance. So a couple of things on what I would advise folks. Don't take other people's advice because their marriage is not your marriage. Mm-hmm. They have not walked your walk. Like, don't look at your neighbor, cousin, aunt, coworker, whatever, and say, they did this, I have to do this. Because you don't. You have a choice. You always have a choice. Rather, look at your relationship, your children, if they're involved, your assets, your income. Look at your situation and figure out, based on your situation and your relationship, I would say, what is the least expensive, least invasive, least acrimonious way to go about it? That's probably mediation. Could be collaborative. Look at your situation. Do you need someone in the room to have your back? Do you need an advocate? Do you need someone to give you counsel? Or do you feel you and your spouse, given the correct support and information, can sort through it? If you think you can sort through it, mediation is probably a good choice. If you don't feel on even ground, you probably need an advocate in the room. Collaborative might be a better choice. And then there are cases that I don't think they're the majority of them. I think they're by far the minority. But there are cases where you need the law to protect you. You know, if there's abuse, if there is a fraud, you know, financial fraud or hiding money. If you're in that situation, to think that you can sit at a table and mediate with full transparency is probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
So kind of goes back to purpose, but in figuring out your first steps, really as best you can, take a look at your situation and your relationship. A couple of misnomers to point out. There's the term amicable divorce, right? But kind of a buzzword. Amicable divorce does not mean we're best buddies and we're just deciding not to be married, but everything's cool with us. Amicable divorce is more about the professionals in that title. It's that these professionals are trying to get you through the process with a solid agreement without facing off and fighting. So the professionals are amicable. You can do an out-of-court process like collaborative or mediation when you do not like your spouse anymore. You can still take it out of court. You don't have to have the legal system as the backdrop driving all of your decisions. And often people don't realize that. They think it's only available to them if they're friends. And a lot of people who are getting divorced are not friends.
Indeed. conscious of time and we need to talk about the book, Brenda. You got to tell us the title of the book and the story you were about to share about the book.
Yeah. So the book, it's interesting because now that that book is done, I think I need a new book. The book was born of post-divorce, me going, I wish I had a reference point. Like, I wish
Mhm.
there was a space that I had when I went through this process that just gave me information I could digest and use making my best decisions. So the book really talks about the three P's. The book breaks things down into different chunks because basically your first chunk is deciding how you want to go through this process. Your second chunk, and this is in no particular order, is going to be financial. That's the other big batch of decisions you're making in this process. And then family. You as an individual are not making legal choices. The attorneys will draft the legal documents and it's a legal process, but your choices are how you want to do it, what you want with your finances, what you want with your family, what you can agree upon. That's your settlement. So that's really what the book covers. The book started out named How to Divorce with Dignity and Grace. That was the name.
Yeah.
They put it in testing. It so flopped. It was just like, are you kidding me? Really? And then the book name turned into, oh shit, I'm getting divorced. The Guide to Divorce with Dignity and Grace. But it really is when divorce happens to people, their visceral reaction, their gut reaction is not like, how do I do this gracefully? Their gut reaction is, oh shit, what is going on here? I don't know what to do. So that's where the title of the book came from. It was not mine. It was gifted to me by people.
That's quite a gift, because getting the messaging and the title right is just so important for it to resonate with people.
Exactly, for it to resonate with those going through divorce. Absolutely.
And the work that you do, if people are, and we spoke about this before we started recording, and interestingly, you were saying you're able to work with people around the world, regardless of the jurisdiction that they're in. Just tell us a bit more about that and how people can find you and the sort of help that you can bring.
Yeah, I appreciate that. As I said, and I'm going to qualify this a little bit, most of my work is as a mediator. So in that, I'm helping people understand what they need to decide and get over rough points if they're having trouble making a decision. I can do that anywhere. We do it live in the office or we do it via Zoom to get them to a point of agreement for their family, for their finances, and how they want to move forward. That then needs to be made legal in the case of divorce where they live or under the jurisdiction they fall within. So if I'm working with someone in Singapore and they're getting divorced in Singapore, then they need to take this agreement to a legal professional in Singapore and have it memorialized according to those rules. Or if it's someone in Georgia or New York, wherever, as a mediator. I'm also a financial advisor in CDFA. That does have licensing restrictions, and that would be the United States. So if someone's coming to me and saying, I want you to be a divorce financial analyst, look at my settlement and advise me on this, then that's United States only for the finances.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yep, perfectly. Yep.
Makes sense.
Great.
And as usual, we'll have those in the show notes as well. Brenda, in the last few minutes, is there anything we've not touched on that you wanted to share? Or is there a habit that if you could pass that on to the next generation so that maybe they don't end up in divorce or that they do divorce better?
Yeah,
if they do decide to go that route, do this.
What have we not touched on that you just love to share?
There's so much here. First, I would say if you are facing divorce, you have my heart. It is a really difficult thing, and I know it's not where you planned to be. No one planned to be there. You planned to be married forever when you got married. That being said, a couple of things. If you are facing divorce, do know that you can always become more aggressive. It's really hard to walk it back if you start out aggressive. and then decide you want to handle it differently. So it's just something to bear in mind if people are kind of like, I don't know the best route for me. If you find you need to litigate, that is always available to you. But if you start there, you will not come out of it and be sitting at my table with me, figuring out your future. So just a thing to bear in mind. What I would like to pass on is the thought that this is your life. These are your children. They are your finances. This is your family. Who do you want to make those decisions? As you walk through this really hard time that is divorce, just hold it in your heart too. Who do you want to make your decisions? Do you want to turn them over to a judge or a courtroom, or have lawyers you just hired who, when the divorce is over, you will probably never have any contact with again? Do you want them handling this part of your life? So my passion, my mission, my greatest desire is that, well, I wish every marriage ended happily ever after and there wasn't divorce, but I'm not in control of that. And knowing that divorce happens, I would really like society to allow people with guidance to make their own decisions with protection where need be, but not to continue to expect that it's war, that it's damaging, that it's a face-off. I would really like to see people take control and make their own choices for their families.
Yeah, beautiful.
Touch wisdom in there.
Exactly. If we could just do it without the war, and you're right, the system's set up to create war. So how do we do that differently? Create the space for a better conversation with kindness and care on a longer term perspective for the sake of the children. Thank you for sharing so openly, so vulnerably, and for sharing such wisdom on the process, and for bringing the healing that you do to the process going forward. So if anybody out there is listening and you find yourself in this place of needing to look seriously at divorce as the option in front of you, please consider doing it in a way that's kinder to you, kinder to all involved, and kinder to your children, certainly for their future, for the sake of everybody in the long term. And with that, we say thank you so much, Brenda, for joining us for this very important conversation. Thank you.
And thank you for having me and for all the work you do to help people have better relationships and stay out of this position.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. There's so much wisdom in there. I just love all the clear steps, the processes. Certainly they resonate with my logical brain, the way my brain thinks, and I'm guessing with a lot of people out there as well. So on behalf of the audience, thank you so much for being with us. And to our audience, we say thank you for tuning in yet again. We just enjoy these conversations. We know that you're benefiting from them, from the feedback that we get, and we hope you continue to do so. But do write in, let us know what other topics you want to hear about. And till the next time, but now it's a wrap. So bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the 4 Habits podcast. Now, if today's episode resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget, take our free relationship skills quiz at the4habits.com/skills quiz to start improving your relationships today. Hit subscribe and we'll see you next time.